No, get out of here, zombies. What are you doing? I don't want to get eaten today. Zombie U. It's a good game. Actually, I like the Zombie U a lot. A lot better than I thought it would be, but you know what? That makes me think about Ubisoft a little bit, because Ubisoft, they're not the biggest publisher in the world. I mean, they make Just Dance 4, so I guess they now are the biggest publisher in the world, but Zombie U was a great game. I also got, the Assassin's Creed 3. I had a lot of fun playing that game. Again, Ubisoft published and made. And of course, there's always the amazing Rayman Origins. I mean, this game is just one of the best games ever. Who cannot love it? And once again, made by Ubisoft. But one thing that makes me, when I look at Zombie U, it makes me remember this other game that came out that was in the exact same position. A new Nintendo console coming out, and Ubisoft decided to make a more adult game, and for the launch, and it actually came out on launch. It was a bit rushed, but maybe it was. I'm not looking forward to playing this one. Not looking forward to it at all. Oh, well, take it away, me. Before the Wii was released, people were trying to figure out whether it would be a hardcore console or not. People were already saying that Nintendo were kiddie during the GameCube years, as games like GTA were only released on the PS2 and Xbox. Another reason was that instead of making a more adult Zelda, they made the cel-shaded game Wind Waker. Of course, people saying that Nintendo were kiddie during this time were stupid, as the Wind Waker was a great game, and having a game have swearing and guns in it doesn't make it adult. Gaming was changing to appeal to a larger, older audience, and it made older Nintendo franchises seem too childish to be taken seriously. Gaming is in a much better place currently though, as games of any style can find its place and be enjoyed. However, before the Wii came out, people were thinking that the motion controls would make it more for kids, especially with the way that the application of the Wiimote was being shown, such as with Wii Sports. Despite this though, Ubisoft decided to take it upon themselves to try and make a hardcore, more mature game for the Wii launch. This led to the game Red Steel, a first-person shooter that used many of the features of the Wiimote. A lot rested on this game as it was the only Wii launched game that seemed to be hardcore, so for many people with PS2 and Xboxes, this was the game to watch to see if the Wii was worth getting. Obviously it didn't stop the Wii from being dismissed later on in its life, but is this game any good? Let's check it out. The story is that you, some American guy, just got engaged to a daughter of a Yakuza mob boss. Before meeting up with the mob boss, everyone is attacked by a rival Yakuza gang and your fiancé is kidnapped. This starts off a journey from LA to Japan to both save your woman and restore order to the father's clan, the Satu clan. The story is pretty decent, it isn't anything special, but it gets the job done and it held my attention to the end. The problem with it though are the cutscenes. Rather than use traditional cutscenes, Red Steel has comic book-like drawings that are simply animated. I really like the idea of this as it matches up with the Japanese themes, but they're of too low quality. Sometimes the characters look like cardboard cutouts, and the way certain things move looks so bad it's laughable. One small problem I had with the actual story though is that why couldn't the story just be about a Yakuza rather than a story about an American being accepted among the Yakuza? It would make more sense that someone in the Yakuza would be able to take them down, and it would make the character more badass rather than just be some generic guy. The game is a first-person shooter, but with it being on the Wii, it's not controlled with dual analog sticks. Instead, you have to walk around with the nunchuck stick and use the Wii pointer to aim and look around. Just a warning to anyone who wants to play this game, the controls are terrible at the beginning. Everything feels like a chore, as because of the pointer you have the freedom to aim wherever you want on the screen without physically moving, but if someone is on the edge of the screen then naturally you aim all the way to the left or right, meaning that your character moves your head to the left or right, so you usually have to aim to the left or right after moving left or right. The reason I try to explain the controls like that is because it's hard to fully explain how the controls make you more precise when you shoot, but also delays everything you do. You can make really precise headshots from large distances, but if there's a guy in front of you moving around a bit, shooting him takes a lot longer than it needs to. I'll admit that after an hour you do get used to moving and aiming, but it took far too long to get used to the game controls, and ultimately it never becomes perfect. I've played Metroid Prime 3 and it only took minutes to adjust to that game, so why are these controls so hard to get used to? Gunfights come down to a large amount of enemies shooting at you and you have to shoot at them back while also taking cover if necessary. A big problem I found with the majority of them though is that there's far too many enemies. You'll walk into a room, have a large horde show up, and you'll kill them all, only to have another large wave show up just afterwards. It doesn't actually get repetitive, but it does become frustrating as it's hard to be tactical in any gunfight. With the controls being slower than a normal FPS is, it's hard to survey the area in the same way to know where all the enemies are. It isn't helped that when there's snipers in the distance or when there's multiple floors above or below you where enemies are firing from. It doesn't help that enemies take a good number of bullets to kill but don't react at all when being shot. When you're doing well, none of these problems really apply, but if you're low on health, trying to wrestle with the controls because some guy you didn't see rushes at you and you're trying to shoot him to no avail, only for him to kill you, meaning that you have to defeat the last two wave of enemies that you already defeated again, it's annoying. Red Steel features its own version of bullet time. Yeah, remember when that was really popular? That was weird. To help you out. After filling up a meter by shooting enemies, you can freeze time and mark instant shots. If you tag someone's gun, you can shoot it out of their hand and make them surrender. It means that if you do this to the leader of a group, you can make the whole group surrender and they will leave you alone. This is a nice idea and you can save yourself a lot of time by being smart. One small problem with it though is that you have to hold A and thrust the remote forward to activate it. It works more consistently than you would think, but it makes you look like an idiot and sucks you out of the game a little bit, so I would have just preferred it to be mapped to a button. Another reason to make people surrender rather than kill them is that it gives you respect points. From what I can tell, these are pretty much completely pointless, although I think there's some sort of respect level that you have, but there's little reason to go for respect points unless you want a better score at the end of each level. What separates Red Steel from other first-person shooters are the sword fights. At certain points in levels, the game takes away your guns and makes you sword fight one-on-one with enemies. These sections use the motion controls, so the Wiimote is your main sword and the nunchuck is your parry sword. You swing your Wiimote to attack, swing your nunchuck to block, and the control stick to avoid attacks. Once again, it's a cool idea and can be enjoyable flailing your arms around to sword fight, but it's not precise enough. The nunchuck's accelerometer is different to the one in the Wiimote, so a lot of the time when you try to parry using the nunchuck, it won't detect it. Also, trying to perform specific swipes is hard, as the game doesn't match what you do with your hand as precisely as you would like it to. These two facts also ruin the game's more complex moves that you learn later on, as you have to do a perfect vertical or horizontal swipe, but the game doesn't register them properly. It means that you'll just flail manically to defeat enemies rather than trying to use tactics, which honestly is fun in itself, but the sword fights could have been something more. The graphics of this game are kind of confusing. At times they can be impressive and there's actually a surprising amount of variety in the locations. However, they look lacking and unpolished. I know the Wii isn't a HD console, so its games can't compare to PS3 or 360 games, but there are good looking Wii games. The main thing that stands out about the graphics are the character models, who look like maybe they didn't have enough time to give them any proper detail. How good graphics are technically doesn't really matter, and the game's style actually makes me like them overall, but there are better looking GameCube games than Red Steel, which is a letdown. There are also some bad glitches in this game, although they're actually more entertaining than they are game breaking. Something that needs to be addressed with this game is the weird cartoony way that it handles its violence. The game is a 16+, but there are no blood effects, which is stranger still, as the game is called Red Steel. It's a really cool name, but in a game called Red Steel I would expect some blood when I stab someone with a sword, not some cartoony orange line. This game feels like it wants to be mature with its characters and setting, but it feels too arcadey without any real violence in it, like when you shoot an enemy they just ragdoll and fall to the floor, rather than some sort of real reaction to the bullets. Red Steel is a game that could have been amazing. The setting is interesting, the gameplay is varied, and there are some cool ideas here. However, the game feels very limited. Controls feel more like a gimmick than a new way to control first-person shooters, and there's a lack of overall polish. If you're interested in this game, then I do say check it out. Despite some frustrations, there's some fun to be had here, even though there's nothing groundbreaking. My score is 5.5 out of 10. Red Steel offers a lot, but rarely fully delivers, giving a semi-decent experience.